Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. So I have a job that I love, which is I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I've been doing this work full time since 2006. And what that looks like is I offer one-on-one sessions, angel sessions to be specific, as well as soul mentoring. And these sessions take place over the phone. And I always have time and space for you, so if you are ever guided to have a session, you can reach out to me through my website. I also am known for my classes. I offer a variety of classes that my hope is will inspire your spirit. I have a new class that starts just about every 6 weeks or so, and it's always changing and evolving. One of the lovely things about facilitating my classes is many of the people who participate have taken other classes with me. So if you ever decide to take one of my classes and you stay, as many people do, you'll get to know people and you'll get to be part of our community. Most of my classes are small in size, so we really do have an opportunity to get to know each other. So in addition to my services and classes, we have this podcast, yay, which I love recording for you. And I also have the Daily Inspiration email blast. So you can sign up for the Daily Inspiration blast or my mailing list on my website, illuminatingsouls.com. And it would be my blessing to connect with you outside of the podcast. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you come into a sweet space where you can replenish and drift off to sleep if that is your intention. I say that because I have spoken to many of you who listen to this podcast during your waking hours. So while it is designed to be a sleep aid, you're also welcome to listen at any time that works for you. I did design this as a sleep podcast because I listen to sleep podcasts every night. I love the genre so much, and it has been very supportive of a healthy sleep cycle for me, which is why I'm here for you. So it's really a blessing to get to be here with you. And as I record this, it is a beautiful day. It is a Friday. It is mid-morning. I had every intention of recording this episode somewhere around 6:15 a.m. But then you know what happened? I dawdled. I have shared with you before my affinity for dawdling, for sitting down, and if I open my browser on my computer, I am gone. I am looking, scanning, watching. And then I think, oh, I'll start recording in a little while. And then I think, well, maybe I'll just record it tomorrow. And I want you to know, I am very proud of myself for sitting here right now, having plugged in the microphone, opening sacred space with the angels so that we could be together now. So there's beautiful love flowing through for you. And if you're new to this podcast, let me just share with you a little bit of what you can expect. We're going to be together for about an hour. I prefer hour-long episodes because that's what I look for in a sleep podcast. And this is not designed to be riveting content where you have to pay attention for an hour. It's really meant to be a conversation, like a rolling conversation with a friend, and you can drift off at any time. hopefully I will keep you somewhat amused. But this isn't going to require heavy intellectual lifting where you have to understand things and remember things. It's meant to be easy and gentle. It's meant to be an invitation. You know, in my mind's eye, I sort of imagine that we're sitting at a table in a cafe somewhere and we're wandering in and out of conversation. And if we were really doing that, I would listen a lot and let you talk. But since this is a podcast, long expanses of silence are not conducive to this format, so I will be doing all the talking here. But I like to imagine that we're having a conversation and I get to hear what you have to say as well. So I was thinking this morning as I was preparing to record about how each one of us has their own sleep cycle and our sleep style. I was watching TikTok yesterday, as I do. I don't know what it is about TikTok, but I enjoy watching it. And this woman was talking about her strategy for sleeping when she's in a hotel. And she says that when she's traveling for business and she's traveling alone, she always gets a room with 2 queen-sized beds. And so she takes the comforter off of the extra bed and she puts it onto the bed she's going to be sleeping in. And then she takes all the pillows and she builds like a little, pillow fort. So there are pillows that are going to go under her knees and at her arms and behind her. And then she turns the air conditioning down really low so the room is cold. And she has the weight of the blankets and she has the security of the pillows and she has the coolness of the room. And she says she gets the best sleep of her life. And I thought, that is genius. Rarely anymore do I travel alone. But if I do, I'm going to do that. I don't know why it is if I am sleeping on my own in a room with 2 beds, why I think I cannot take the covers off of the second bed and put it onto the one I'm sleeping in. But I thought that is a whole life strategy right there. So if you've been listening, you know that I love bedtime. I love it. I love when the end of the day comes and I start feeling a little tired and I get to crawl into bed. And we have a really comfortable bed. My husband invested in a Tempur-Pedic bed years ago. My husband, he has the same philosophy my father did, which is when you're going to buy something, whether it's a piece of furniture or a car or a tool or something, you buy the best. You don't worry about price. Because if you buy the best, it's going to last a long time. I don't know. I've always been a bargain girl. So when my husband and I are shopping for something substantial, I typically am uncomfortable because he's ready to spend more money than I am. And he's always right. So years ago, when we went mattress shopping, I don't know if you've ever shopped for a Tempur-Pedic mattress, but they are not a bargain. They are very expensive. And we got the adjustable base and I remember when we were at the mattress store, I kept gravitating towards the less expensive mattresses. And then, I don't know if it was the salesperson or my husband said, just get on the Tempur-Pedic, just get on it. And something you should know about me, I have no poker face. I have no game, because the moment I laid on this mattress, I'm quite certain a look of bliss came over my entire being. And my husband said, this is the one we're going to take. And I looked at the price. He goes, I don't care. We're getting this one. And so that has been our mattress ever since. And I love this thing. And I think we're reaching the point where we probably need to replace it because there are some well-worn divots in it at this point, because any mattress needs to be replaced at some point. But I love our bed. Tempur-Pedic all the way. And we have these cozy sheets and blankets and comforters and pillows, and I just get so happy to crawl in bed at the end of the day, not in a depressive way, like I can't get out of bed because I don't like life, but I mean in the way that, I've had a good day here on planet Earth and it is over. I have lived today and now I get to go to sleep. Yay. And so I go to sleep. And so I have a good relationship with sleep and bedtime. And so my hope is I can share this with you. And as we come into that quiet mystery that is sleep, that you can drift off in a cocoon filled with love for you. I've always loved having some kind of ambient noise in the background, not noisiness. We'll talk about that a little later, because I've lived in apartment buildings and I don't mean that kind of noise. More what I think of is growing up, my sister and I had a bedroom on the second floor, and my parents would be downstairs watching television or having a conversation, and so there would be a murmuring off in the distance, and it meant that I was safe and I was cozy. And even these days, when I go to sleep, my husband usually stays up later than me, and so the TV is playing softly in the background because he's in the living room watching something. And so even though I put in my earbuds and listen to my sleep podcast, I know that I'm sleeping and the man I love is in the other room. And that brings me comfort. And so even if you are sleeping alone, I'm hoping that my voice and my presence and the angels will bring you comfort as you drift off. There's something very sweet about whispering together in the night. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be here with you. And the angels are here too. So I invite you to get comfortable in whatever way works best for you. And I invite you to take in some nice deep breaths, just breathing in gently. And then also letting go of anything that came before this moment. Just releasing, allowing yourself to receive the love that is here for you. And I'm going to call the angels in to join us. They're already here, but I love sharing this ritual with you. So beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and I ask that you infuse this broadcast with divine love and healing and light and inspiration, and also the essence of goodness and gentleness. And please lift from us anything that is not ours, lifting from us the heaviness of the world or the heaviness of others that we need not carry, that we need not hold on to, sending it off into the light where it can be transformed in service. That we don't need to carry the energy of others. It is not our responsibility. So we can let that go. So just take a breath in, allowing the angels to help bring you into lightness of spirit, into your beautiful, vibrant, authentic essence. Just breathing and receiving, letting the light flow to you. It's interesting. I'm not going to share the details because it's really not important, but I was at the grocery store yesterday and I was behaving in a way that in my intention was kind, and the other person who was in line with me was a jerk. We'll just call it that. He was a jerk. And he was not kind. And honestly, it stuck with me for hours. And it's ridiculous because it was this very transitory, very brief encounter that really did not have to have any lasting stickiness. But it did. And so I share that with you because it is so easy to get slimed energetically. Or, if you've ever gotten, burrs or something in your pants or dog hair or something, it's easy to pick this stuff up and replay it in our minds over and over again, and it's completely unnecessary. And so just then, when the angels were encouraging us to let it go, I thought, oh, this is for me too. Let that conversation go, Laurel. That was not your pain. That was not your frustration. You are not the cause of it, nor could you be the resolution of it. Let it go. So I share that with you because it happens to all of us. So let's just kind of take a collective breath in, yes? And let's let go of other people's stuff. We live on a planet with billions of other people, and it's complicated out there. And at the end of the day, all we can do is have influence within our own sphere of consciousness and behave in ways that are in alignment with our core values, and how others receive us is up to them. I know, easier said than done, but let's just breathe that in. It's a vibrational reality right now. Asking the angels to help set up a buffer zone for us all. It does feel like, people are pretty frustrated out in the world right now, so we'll set up a buffer. And let me share with you a little bit of the origins of my buffer zone with the angels. I used to work in Hollywood, and I don't mean glorious, beautiful Hollywood. I mean the neighborhood of Hollywood, which is not all that great. And so it was kind of seedy. And sometimes when I was walking from our office to go get some lunch, I would pass some really seedy places where the energy was heavy and sad and difficult. And yes, I could send light, but also I needed to make sure I wasn't picking things up. So the angels suggested that I set up an angelic buffer. And what they described to me was, imagine that you are walking and there are concentric circles of angels 12 deep all around you. And they are shining light, and they are transmuting everything around you into love. So not only are they sharing love with everywhere you go, but they're also making sure that anything that reaches you has been transmuted into divine love by the time it reaches you. And it was just a really beautiful, powerful vision and invitation, because the angelic buffer is not just for me. It's not this self-serving thing that says, I'm going to be good while I'm going through this very seedy neighborhood. It's, I will be good, but I'm sharing this goodness with you. That I am shining love. I'm asking the angels to transmute everything into love. And so that's the origins of the angelic buffer that I speak of, and I find it very helpful. So I am invoking the angelic buffer on this day, and I invite you to do the same. Angelic buffer invoked in service to the highest and greatest good of all concerned. And we'll just breathe into that. So just take another breath in and out, and I'm noticing there's some ambient noise here in my neighborhood. Just let it go. And I invite you to drift off to sleep whenever you are ready. And as I speak these words, I'm getting angelic tingles, which, just sort of happen at my crown chakra. So the angels are absolutely here with you. It's their way of saying hello. So you drift off to sleep or do whatever it is you're doing. And we're going to move on into story time. Because we can. Because story time is good. So here we go. So for this story time, I'm guided to share with you just some really random stories from my childhood. It's been a while since I have done stories from my life. At least it feels that way for me. And I have this piece of purple paper. I have purple paper that I write on all the time. So it makes me happy, and I write in purple ink. I don't know why you need to know that, but I'm sharing. And so I have a list. I don't know how far down the list I'm going to get, and they're not necessarily related, but they'll make good stories. And it's a sleep podcast, so it is not meant to be riveting. So I grew up, as those of you who listen know, I grew up in Skokie, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I grew up in the 60s and 70s, which was a very different time. And we had a lot of freedom as kids that kids today don't have. We grew up on a block with a lot of kids in our age group, which meant we were within 2 and 3 years of each other. So we all knew each other, and it felt that we all lived there forever, and we were never going to leave. I mean, maybe it was 5 years, but when you're a kid, that's your whole life. That's your forever. And it was a time and space where we got to have a lot of time alone with each other. And it doesn't mean that there wasn't a parent somewhere who had their ears open for us. But we did not need to be supervised the way kids are today. We could go off on adventures and wander in and out of each other's houses and backyards and basements and go to parks and drive our bikes around the neighborhood without a parent knowing exactly where we were. So it created a wonderful time of adventure and independence, decision-making for better or worse, sometimes for worse, but we came through it unscathed. So I see this as a happy time in my life, and the kind of childhood I don't know is available to many people anymore. So here are some of my random memories. So the first thing I have written down is lemonade stand. Did you ever have a lemonade stand? And we called it a lemonade stand even though, for the most part, we were selling Kool-Aid. Because Kool-Aid was the drink of choice back then. You would have these powdered packets that would be filled with flavoring and sugar, and you would put it into a plastic pitcher because, plastic was a huge thing in the 60s and 70s, and we were children and could not be trusted with a glass pitcher. And we had this pitcher, I don't know if anybody else had it, but it had a plunger in the cap. So it was the coolest thing. So you would put your Kool-Aid in the pitcher, fill it with water, and then you'd put the cap on, and you'd raise the plunger and depress the plunger a bunch of times, and it would mix up the Kool-Aid. It was brilliant. I don't know if they still make them anymore. I haven't looked for one in a long time. And then you'd put in ice. Now, it's important to say that we did not have an automatic ice maker in my childhood. And this was before the plastic ice trays. We had metal ice trays that had a lever in the middle of the tray that you would have to lift up to try to loosen the cubes. So we would make Kool-Aid with the pitcher, with the plunger, and the ice cubes from the metal tray that hopefully we were kind enough to fill up again. And then we would take our little cups and we would set up a little card table in front of the house. Now this in and of itself is a lovely, sweet, benign thing until we would then sit there and scream at the top of our lungs, Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid for sale. That was the rhythm. You'd say Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid 3 times, for sale. And you would scream it, and if there were 2 or 3 of you having the Kool-Aid stand, you would all say it together. Because maybe we supposed there might be someone thirsty with a hankering for Kool-Aid 3 blocks over who would need to know about our Kool-Aid sale. Now here's the thing. No one within a 3-block radius wanted our Kool-Aid for the most part. For the most part, we drank our own Kool-Aid and we put nickels into our little bank. And if we timed it right, one of the men in our neighborhood, it was always a man because at that time the men worked and the women stayed home, that some man from our neighborhood, someone's dad, would at some point in the late afternoon, early evening, be walking up our block. They would have, taken the train to downtown Chicago. They would have gotten off at the Howard L and taken a bus to Howard and Crawford. I know you know none of these places, but just feel into the exhaustion of it. And then perhaps carrying their briefcase and their suit jacket, have walked 3 blocks and turn up the corner to our street as we are yelling, Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid for sale. And we grew up around nice people, and he was not going to bypass us and not get Kool-Aid. So of course he had to stop and give us a nickel or whatever we were charging and have a little tiny Dixie cup, because they were Dixie cups back then, of Kool-Aid. And he would drink it in front of us and go, oh, that is good Kool-Aid, because he's a nice guy, whoever that was. And we would feel victorious. Here's the thing I marvel about. I don't know when it happened, but at some point, do you guys remember Gladys Kravitz on Bewitched? Who's always looking through her blinds and complaining about everything. At some point, I'm not as bad as Gladys Kravitz, but I have become the crabby old woman. I do not want kids yelling. I mean, they don't, just so you know. I'm not crabby to children. But if I had children outside of my door or just down the block screaming Kool-Aid for sale for 2 hours at the top of their lungs, I don't know that I could be kind about it. I think I would probably march down there with like $10 and say, okay, here's the deal. Here's $10. Please close up shop. You can have all your own Kool-Aid. I want none of it. But please be quiet. I will pay you for your quiet. And I just think it's so funny that at some point I became this person. I don't know when that happened. But it's interesting how lives can span the expanse of experiences. And no one ever came out and yelled at us. I mean, isn't that amazing? We were loud kids. Like, another memory that I have for us is we would play in the street. Now, it was not a busy street. Maybe a car drove up our street every 45 minutes or so. Like, it wasn't often. It was the suburbs and there wasn't a lot of traffic. So we would play games in the street. And the second a car pulled up our block, and it would go slowly, because it was a side street and it was the 60s, we would start screaming at the top of our lungs, "Car! Car!" And we would all yell it at the same time, just to make sure none of us would be standing in the street when a very slow moving car would come up the street, and we would all scramble for safety. So again, it would annoy me now if I heard kids yelling "car" every time a car went up our street. So I just have to really give a shout out to the adults in our neighborhoods who were patient with us and let us be loud and an unruly bunch. And I don't know, I suppose the moms at the time were just happy we were not underfoot. If they could hear us yelling Kool-Aid for sale or car, they knew we were alive and well and still within reach of them, even if they were in the house ironing or cooking or whatever, they watching their soaps. I don't know. My mom actually never watched soaps. I just mean, as the mom, your kids are okay because you can hear them. That's a good thing. It was, like a little, we didn't have, Apple tags for things, but we could yell all the time. And that was pretty much, I think, how parents oriented to where we were. The other thing that came forward, and this is a memory that is for somebody who listens to the podcast. There's a wonderful woman who I grew up with. She grew up on the same street as me, so you know who you are. And so we grew up together. And so perhaps some of these memories will also be familiar to you, my friend. And this is the memory specifically I want to talk about. So everyone's house, everyone's basement, and everyone's backyard had its own personality. And so as kids, we would decide where we wanted to play based upon the accoutrements, if you will, of someone's backyard, front yard, or basement. That makes sense, yes? So in my friend's backyard, and to my friend, I don't know if you remember this. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't, because it was a significant feature of your backyard. There was a big old tree. We all had big old trees back then. And this particular tree had like a split, like a V. It wasn't in danger. It just sort of had a V, and there was a big branch going off in one direction and a big branch going off in the other direction. And it was positioned so that as kids, we could climb into the V. And on one of the trunks of the V, there was a big knothole that we called a button. So we would play rocket ship with this tree. You'll have to send me an email and tell me if you remember this. But to me, that was one of the phenomenal features of this backyard, was the rocket ship tree. So when we wanted to play rocket ship, we would go to their backyard because, hello, they had the rocket ship tree with the cool V and the button. And then we would take turns on who would get to go to space. Because remember, this is the 60s. And we're all about going to the moon. Like, space travel is a huge thing. We were drinking Tang. And we had these weird, like, astronaut sticks. I don't know what they were made of, but they were kind of fudgy and not really. Tang was the big thing because astronauts apparently drank Tang. I don't know if that was true or not. But so to my friend who listens, I don't know if you remember or if you ever even knew that you had an astronaut tree, actually a rocket ship tree in your backyard. But I still remember that knothole and getting to press it and then going to space. Isn't it funny the things we remember? So that was one of them. Another memory that I have is my next door neighbor. He was wilder than I was. Now here's what I mean. I was always a girl who colored in the lines, right? Like I followed rules, but I always loved my friends who bent rules. And I loved my friends who had a bigger sense of adventure than I would, because I would benefit from that. So my friend next door had a much broader sense of adventure and rule bending than I did. So in almost all of our homes on our block, they had different features. They had a basement, they might have an attic, or they might have a crawl space, or a shed, all of which are phenomenal things to play with when you're a kid. Even though as an adult now, I think, wow, that was a bad idea. But what did we know? So he had both an attic and a crawl space. So first let me tell you about the crawl space. You would access the crawl space. There were 6 steps from the backyard going down into like a little stairwell, and that's how you would access the basement. And just above that was access to the crawl space that was under the house. So you had to like go up about 3 or 4 feet from the bottom of the well to get into the crawl space. So you might need a little ladder to get there. And also we were kids. So my friend, he could kind of jump up because he was very athletic. So typically what he would do is he would like push me up. Like I just remember getting hoisted and pushed up into the crawl space. And then he would jump up and scramble in after me. And there would always be a cardboard box. And he would make it into a medicine cabinet. Because like survival, right? We needed to survive. And in the medicine cabinet, there would be mercurochrome, which we never used in our house, but he did in his apparently. And there would be bandages. And somehow snacks were involved because we were kids, right? And we would hang out in the clubhouse. It was a clubhouse, even though it was the crawl space. And then, you know, we did something awful, which was when parents would call for us, we wouldn't answer because we were in secret. And so there were a couple times my mom was not happy because she did not know where I was, because I was not yelling Kool-Aid. I was not yelling car. I was in the cone of silence. That was the clubhouse with the mercurochrome and the Band-Aids. And so when I finally emerged, my mother would be very unhappy with me, and I would get a talking to. The other clubhouse was in his attic, so when the crawl space was not available or desirable, we would go into his attic and do the same thing. So homage to our childhood clubhouses that would get us into trouble. And so now as an adult, I'm thinking about how unsafe this must have been. I can only imagine what was in the crawl space or the attic, but we didn't care because we were kids and we felt invincible. So clubhouses, pretty cool things. The other thing is, again, everybody's home had a different personality. So I remember a lot of playing in basements. So because people had different games in the basements. And so on a rainy day or when it was the winter, we would go into somebody's basement and play games, which was very enjoyable. I remember going bike riding, and especially in my childhood, and those of you who are my age will remember these bikes well. The bikes with the banana seats, yes, and the streamers coming off the handlebars, and the plastic wicker-like basket with the bright 1970s flowers on them. And then we would ride our bikes all around the neighborhood. So I definitely had the banana seat and the streamers and the basket on my bicycle until such time as I evolved into a more grown-up 10-speed bicycle. But for the longest time, my banana seat bicycle was my jam. And I think we would put cards in the spokes so that it would make noise. Of course, because we needed to make a lot of noise as we went through the neighborhood. And I also remember the victory of learning how to ride my bicycle with no hands. Do you remember that? Like I could keep my balance on a bicycle with no hands. I don't think I could ride a bicycle anymore. They say you never forget, but I'm pretty sure I have forgotten. Because you know what I have forgotten? I have forgotten how to get out of a bathtub. A whole other story. But I'm pretty sure if I cannot gracefully hoist myself out of a bathtub these days, I in all likelihood could not stay on a two-wheel bicycle without causing great harm to myself or someone else. Because maybe it wouldn't be me, maybe, I'd run into somebody. So I will be staying off bicycles for the rest of this lifetime as Laurel. I can renegotiate for another lifetime, but for now, bicycles and we've had a good run, and we are now complete with that journey. Okay, some other random memories from my childhood. There's one, I must have been 3 years old. I'm picking 3 years old because it was an age when I could easily hide. And it was also an age where I don't know that I fully appreciated right from wrong. Meaning I didn't have a concept of wrong. When you're older, a little older, I should not be doing this. This is not a good thing. And what I'm about to describe to you happened before I had an awareness that what I was doing was wrong. So we were shopping at Marshall Fields with my mom. So Marshall Fields was a department store. It was a beautiful department store. I have several episodes about it where I read to you about the store. Great store. And back in the day, now they have scanners, right? So they scan the barcode and ring something up. Well, this was before there were scanners. I'm 3 years old, so it's probably 1965. And the way they would ring things up and manage inventory is there would be a hanging sales tag on an article of clothing. And it would be perforated. It would have 2 parts. And the same information would be on both parts of the tag. So, let's say you're buying a blouse. The sales woman, always a woman, again, sorry about the gender roles, but if you're shopping in the women's department, in all likelihood in 1965, it is a woman who is ringing you up. So she would fold the tag to activate the perforation, and then she would rip off half the tag. You guys remember that when you could, like, something was perforated and that you would have the satisfaction of kind of ripping it off? And so if you were buying 2 blouses, she would bend the tag of the first blouse and rip off half of it. And then she would do the same for the second one and take off the other half of the second ticket. And then she would ring them up. So it would have a department code. It would have a price on it that she would then put into the register. And that would then go into just a little container at the register. This is how they helped keep their inventory. And then you would take your merchandise home that would still have the hang tag on it, so in case you needed to return it, you could. Why am I telling you all of this? So, my mom is at the store with me. Somehow, I crawled underneath the round hanging thing with all of the clothes on it. So, you go into a store and there is a rounder that has clothes all around it. So I crawled under there. Amazing clubhouse, right? Completely surrounded by clothes. No one can see me. This is phenomenal. Again, I'm about 3. And on the inside of the rounder is the side of the clothes that have the tags on them. So I'd seen the woman rip the tags in half to ring things up. So I was like, that's what I should do. Do you know where this is going yet? So however long I was left unattended, which really could not have been that long because my mom was a good mom. To me, it felt like an hour. But I was left unattended to do some real damage here where I started breaking off the tickets. I'm so proud of myself. I'm ripping the tickets in half. And at some point, I don't have any memory of this part, but my mom must have said, Laurel, where are you? And found me. Because you can't be very stealthy like that in a store. And I come out, and all of these tickets are on the floor. And I'm sure my mother was appropriately horrified, as would have been the saleswoman. Because this saleswoman now has to take all the broken tickets and staple them back to the appropriate ticket, right? Like this is department 35 for $32, and had to somehow staple them all together. So somehow I created extra work for, I'm sure, some very tired salesperson who now had to make order out of the chaos that toddler me created. Isn't that the funniest memory? I still can see it. I can feel how cozy I was in my cocoon of clothes all around me, and the satisfaction of ripping the tickets, bending them like I'd seen the salesperson do, and ripping off my half. It was so satisfying. And then there was a mess left behind. My mother was horrified, as I'm sure was the salesperson whose job it would be to rectify the mess that I had created. So, truly, if time is not linear and we can send healing light in all directions of time, I send light and love to my mother and to whoever had to clean up the mess that I created as a child. God bless everybody in that moment. And I had a really good time. I had fun. Again, this is why I think it happened at the age where I did not understand right from wrong. Because certainly as a child, I did things that were wrong and I knew they were wrong. And I sort of did a risk assessment as to, do I care? So certainly that is a part of my childhood. But that moment was not one of them. I just was having a great time. Who didn't want to bend a sales tag and rip off your part? That looked like so much fun. So, another childhood memory. Then another one that I want to share with you is related to something I teach now, which is, who have you always been? What has always been true about you? So, the authentic essence of who we are typically has been present and visible in different ways throughout our life. Right? Like if you've always been a counselor, even when you were a kid, giving people advice. If you've always been the shy one, there's this wonderful video of 3 little girls at a dance recital. Now, one of the little girls, she is out there, man. She is performing for everything she is. Like, she's a ham. She's awesome. Another little girl is terrified and crying and won't move. And another one is watching the teacher intently, following all the steps, right? So you have the one that is gregarious and outgoing, you have the one who's terrified, and you have the one that is following the instructions. And what's so interesting is when I post this on social media, so many people identify as one of the girls. So I'm definitely the showboat. But someone else will go, I'm the crying one, right? It's like we've always been who we are. So that's where this story comes in, because throughout our lives, we have received subliminal messaging that either tells us this essence of who we are, fantastic, more of this please, or this essence of who we are may not be so great, or modulate it, pull it back a little bit. And that's where this story comes in. So, throughout my life, I have been blessed. Lucky, if you will. Wes calls it my luck bubble. Many years ago, an old boyfriend would get frustrated. He'd like, I don't know why you're so lucky. I've since come to understand about astrology and other things that I actually do have some very terrific aspects that make certain aspects of my life come very easily to me. So this is from childhood. I think in this story, I must be 10 or 12 years old. I'm a little older. I don't know, maybe between 8 and 12. I don't really remember the exact age. But every year, the company that my father worked for would have a picnic for the employees and their families. And listen, I was always up for a great picnic, right? A great picnic. There would be barbecue, there would be entertainment, there would be games. And many of the games were based in competition, right? You might have a 3-legged race. You might have the race where you're carrying the egg on the spoon. You know, it's very clean fun. You might have a watermelon eating contest. And I'm a competitive kid. Not when it comes to sports, because I couldn't do sports. But I could eat watermelon, right? Like I was very competitive about things I did well. So at one of the picnics, I seem to recall there were these ongoing bingo games. Now, bingo takes no skill. It is pure luck. And for some reason, I kept winning at bingo. So here I am, this very vivacious kid. You know, red hair, I'm really hard to miss. And I was getting so excited because I kept winning all the bingo games. Now, when I say all of them, I don't really know how many they were. You know, I'm not saying I won 20 bingo games, but I'd won enough bingo games that it was starting to be a little weird. And I remember my mom saying to me, Laurel, stop playing. You can't win that much. Or something like that. Now, I know my mom was kind about it, but whatever she said to me in that moment, the messaging was, you need to pull back on how much you're winning because you're not giving other people an opportunity to win. And that's a message I have received in different times in my life, that you can't shine too brightly because there might not be space for other people to shine. It's interesting to me how these messages are very subliminal and they grow roots inside of us, because there was something about that moment that felt like a choice point. That here I was playing this random game. You know, it's not as if I had a skill set that was far beyond the skill set of the other children, right? It's a random game. And I kept winning, and people were remarking, why is Jack's daughter winning so much? And somehow getting some kind of messaging from my mom that said, Laurel, you can't win that much. Isn't that an interesting message? I know my mom meant no harm in that, but it was at an age stage where I think we're trying to understand the social contracts, right, of how we engage with people. and that I might have to be kind of embarrassed or cognizant of my winningness in life. I've since learned in astrology, you can have certain aspects that make certain parts of your life come easily, and I happen to have quite a few aspects that allow me to gracefully shine where my career is concerned. I have the sun in the 10th house, and the 10th house is career, and sun is your light, and I have a couple really positive aspects to my sun in the 10th house. It doesn't mean I don't work hard, but it means that this is an area of my life that has been infused with grace. And yes, I've had hard times as well, so it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but overall, I think I've had many more blessings when it comes to my career than difficulties. So when I think back about that moment at the summer picnic where I was winning too much, if somehow that was not my 10th house sun shining, like, you're blessed, Laurel, you're blessed. Good things happen to you. But we all have certain parts of our lives that come more easily to us than others, and certain parts of our lives that are much more difficult. So like any balanced human being on the planet, I also have areas of my life that are not as graceful. Right? There's reasons we all have to go into therapy at some point and heal, yes. But I just remember getting this message that things come easily to me, and that might not be a good thing. And people might be resentful. And why are these good things happening to you and not to someone else? There are definitely areas of my life that are filled with a lot of grace, including getting to be here and speak with you. And so I make the most of it. I show up in loving service. So, to that little girl that I was, yes, I was trying to figure out how to measure out my light in the appropriate doses so that everybody would get a fair chance, but still wanted to compete, right? I still wanted to win. Who didn't want to win at bingo? Who didn't want a prize? Who didn't want a gold star? But that part of me that was confused about how to measure how much of my light I could bring forward at any moment. I'm so grateful now to understand what that means and how that works and how to make sure there is space for others without having to dull my light, that's not the answer, but more to recognize that I have a wonderful opportunity and gift to hold and create big, beautiful spaces for other people where there's more than enough room for you and for me and for others. So here's to who we were when we were younger and we were trying to understand life and our place in it. And here's to the dreams of going to the moon on a beautiful rocket ship that was really a tree in someone's backyard, and our secret clubhouses and our lemonade stands and playing as kids and our super cool bikes and winning a little bit too much at bingo. We all have a tapestry that is childhood, and sometimes in the journey of self-growth, we focus on the pain that we've been through. And it's important to be able to do that because quite often the pain of childhood was not witnessed, and we get to go back and hold space for everything we've been through. But hopefully after we do that, we also can come back into the wonder of childhood and the imagination and who we were in the most magical sense of the word. I was always a girl who daydreamed. I was always a girl who daydreamed of fairies and magic and joy and goodness. And listen, there were many things about my childhood. They were all so difficult. I was a kid who was bullied a lot, and so I don't want to make it all sound amazing. But I worked through those parts, and so now I get to share with you the magic and the joy of it. So, thank you for letting me share this with you. I send you love, and I send love to your inner child. And I send love across the timeline of your life. And I love the image that our inner little ones get to play together. And we'll have a lemonade stand, or whatever we want to do. Well, we can do whatever we want. You know, eat all the Oreos in a box or something fun. And we'll talk again soon. So have sweet dreams, my friends. And I love you. And I am so profoundly grateful for the gift of you. Thank you.